Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of the Sunday Sideline Report. I'm Mike Rifkin, joined by Mark Old Ops Guy Halpern. Mark, how we doing?
Oh, the old ops guy did the old ops guy dance last night, the Gangnam style. Daddy, Uncle old ops guy's happy.
Uncle Old Ops Guy's
Yeah,
happy,
yes,
which really just sounds weird in certain
yes,
ways.
it sure does. But
Oh,
we were there, just in a meeting last night, just having a little fun. The Cowboys, just have a way of making me to drink.
that's true. So we'll start with the last night's game. We'll get into some news of the week. Then we'll break down some of the bigger games coming up on Sunday. We're not doing this on Sunday because Sunday is New Year's Day. So everyone Saturday night, raise the roof.
The
Everyone likes to
roof.
party, unless you're gonna freeze in Times Square, which
No, thank you.
no thanks. Yeah. So I hope everyone has a happy and healthy New Year. But let's just dive right into last night's game, which Mark had mentioned. The Dallas Cowboys defeated the Tennessee Titans by a score of 27-13. By the way, I'm looking at numbers here, and seeing Dallas at 12-4 makes me think the season's already over.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you can't get not used to that. So, Dak Prescott, 29 of 41, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. CD Lamb had over 100 yards receiving. Mark's guy Zeke had a rushing touchdown without Tony Pollard. For Tennessee, or what were the Tennessee Titans last night?
Yeah.
Josh Dobbs, 20 of 39, 232 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And really that's your big step, because the Tennessee Titans did not play their guys last night. Like, this was they know their season is on the line next week when they take on the Jaguars in Jacksonville. That'll be for the AFC South division. So they figured, let's rest most of our guys who are banged up because we need them for next week.
Right.
The Cowboys, to their credit, took advantage of that.
Yes and no. And this coming from the diehard Cowboy fan, and I put Noah step under me just because I'm older. That's all. Um, if you look at the way the Cowboys came into this game, it's been the same kind of start for the Cowboys over the last 3 games in which they're playing careful. I understand you've clinched a playoff spot. You know who you're going to be facing in the playoffs. So, yeah, the right move was to rest Tony Pollard last night. It's possible Philadelphia loses to New Orleans, my lips to New Orleans ears. And that would make next week's Dallas Washington game all the more important. And they're going to need the likes of Pollard in that game. It was good to see T.Y. Hilton get a little more into the mix. But I give a hats off to the Tennessee rushing defense. Bottled up, Ezekiel Elliott, 19 carries for 37 yards. That's atrocious. That's not even 2 yards a carry. But yes,
Yeah, he's just under 2 per carry. The
right,
Cowboys as a team were 2.7 yards per carry.
which is embarrassing. Okay. I mean, I don't think they've rushed for that little in 3 years. And I think Zeke would have had a better night, but he got his rushing touchdown. It's just something he's really now known for in Dallas. And that's what he does. He's there to be the Chris Carter of running backs. He just scores touchdowns. That's what he does. And that's going to pretty much be Zeke's role. He will remain with the Cowboys for the rest of his career. And Pollard will be the one, and Zeke will be the change of pace at 2. And I think that's the way to go.
My thing on Dallas, and this is projecting forward. This isn't about last night. This is about projecting forward. They have to run the ball better. They have to run the ball better. Not because Dak Prescott has turned the ball over. That's not my issue. And Dak is really not an issue for me. I think Dak is a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the league. This team for years was all about being physical and running the football. All of a sudden, they have changed their identity. And at times, it feels like they are in identity crisis because Kellen Moore, at times, I credit Noah because I've started noticing this when Noah's told me. They abandon the run game way too quickly in games. Now, I get it. Last night, you rushed for under 3 yards a carry, and you don't want to stick with it. But the run game for them is so important because that sets up your play action game, which I think Dak is great in play action. You know, open up the middle of the field where Dalton Schultz can live. Gallup and CeeDee Lamb are great route runners. I just think this team at times loses its identity. And to say, well, Dak threw the ball 41 times, they ran the ball 32. Okay, if you bring Dak's passes down a smidge, 2, 3, and you add that to the run game, the balance of this offense could be very dangerous in the playoffs. But I think at times Kellen Moore is very quick to abandon the running game.
And that's been my problem, and I'm sure Noah has the same. Like you said, Noah does have the same. This is this is the reason why I wanted. If everybody knows that sound, that is the clapping sound. I wanted Jason Garrett back as the offensive coordinator for one reason. He loved running the ball. He made it. If you saw what he did with DeMarco Murray in the early years, look at Zeke in 2016. Obviously, Zeke is not that person anymore, but Dallas was always built by the run. Going back to look what's been in their running back: Tony Dorsett, Emmitt Smith, Herschel Walker, and then the list goes on. I have no problem with passing the ball 20, 25 times. And I think Dak would be better if he kept it to that. Like you said, get the rundown, it sets up your play action. And I could see doing double screens to either Zeke or Pollard, but Kellen Moore needs to change. That's the position that needs to go at the end of this year. Whether if Dallas doesn't go to the Super Bowl, you will see Mike McCarthy gone and Sean Payton come in. If Dallas is in the Super Bowl, McCarthy.
Okay, so you've said Super Bowl. Okay, because this is where I really wanted to get to, because I've always felt like if they got to the NFC Championship game, there's a way they can make it work. But you're on the record of it's Super Bowl or bust.
Yes.
But I'm going to change the tactic a little bit because I'm in agreement with you. It's Mike McCarthy's gone at that point. I wonder about Dak. There's a piece of me that just wonders if Jerry would say, okay, we've given him enough, we've paid him, and he hasn't gotten me to where I want to go.
See, here comes the issue. Dallas has nobody behind Dak that is a number one at the moment. If they were planning in any thought of the way with the team they have now, they would have picked up a number one or drafted a number one for that reason. I think Dak still has 2 more years on that contract. He's going to get paid $50 million a year. And then, it's going to be decision time for Jerry Ball, whether they're going to have to pick up a number one in a year or two and say, look, Dak, we're going to let you go, or grill it up if Dak's got you a Super Bowl and you got to pay him out to what he deserved. You're telling me Dak is less deserving of what Russell Wilson got? And Wilson playing?
Not after this year.
Exactly. So, the money is ridiculous that what Dak got, what Kyler Murray got, what Saquon Barkley's gonna get, and what Corey Seager got in baseball. Money is just thrown around, and it doesn't, in this day and age, determine if you're a good player or not. It's by your status on the field, not what's in your wallet. So,
okay. All right, so Dallas wins 27-13. They'll end the season against Washington next week. Tennessee, as mentioned, they'll play Jacksonville. The winner pretty much gets the AFC South. The loser will go home because Tennessee at 8-9, if they win that, or if they lose that game 7-10, they're not a playoff team. So
Right.
I'm going to be very interested, not in that game next week, but if Tennessee loses that game and Jacksonville wins the South, what's the status of Mike Vrabel? We had this conversation on this week's edition of the Wishbone Shotgun after the Nathaniel Hackett news, which we'll get to in a minute. But Mike Vrabel's name came up, and you know what? We had a really interesting conversation. I'm not saying he wouldn't get another job, because I actually think there'd be one lined up for him right now if he wanted it.
Okay.
And that would be to be the successor to Bill Belichick.
In New England?
In New England.
I don't know about that. I'm not saying Vrabel wouldn't do good there. I mean, especially because he played for Belichick. So he knows how Belichick coaches.
I mean, he's got a better...
It's interesting to think about.
He's got a better track record than the judge, Joe Judge, and Matt Patricia, who can't call offensive plays. The only way it doesn't work is unless their plan is to give the job to Belichick's kid, which I wouldn't wish on anybody, because how do you follow the greatest coach of all time?
You can't. That's just like when Don Shula retired. It's an impossibility.
Yeah, so those two teams the Cowboys are going to go to the playoffs. Tennessee will wait and see. All right, on to the news of the week, and we're going to stay strictly in what we thought was going to be the AFC best. It was not. And we'll start with what happened in Denver, and then we'll work our way to Vegas. But Nathaniel Hackett fired, couldn't even make it a full season in Denver. We know what a tumultuous run it's been in Denver this year.
Good word.
Sometimes I like to use the big words, show off the vocabulary. Russell Wilson's been dreadful this year. I mean, you know what? I'm going to keep the big word thing going. That trade for Denver for Russell Wilson this year is an abomination.
In my opinion, right now, it'd be most advantageous for Denver to seek other options with Russell Wilson.
See, but they just paid him.
That's the problem.
That's going to be the problem. The only way this works, because the Walmart people now own the Broncos, he becomes a Walmart greeter.
That's what I was just thinking.
That's what he's going to become. Welcome to Walmart. But
I have a receiver somewhere in the vicinity of aisle 15 and 29. They'll be able to help you.
And by the way, that Denver first round pick is looking like it's going to be in the top 5. Well, it will be in the top 5. The Seattle Seahawks, who've won 7 games, own that pick.
As of right now. I mean, things can still change. But can you imagine Seattle having the 5 pick with the quarterbacks that are available? I mean, look, Geno Smith has done a fantastic job in Seattle, keeping the team still in playoff contention. I mean, they're not out of it yet, but
they need a lot of things to fall their way.
Correct. I mean, you got to credit Geno Smith, but you also have to realize Geno Smith is not going to be there for 3-4 years. Now's the time to draft a rookie quarterback, get him acclimated with Metcalf and Lockett for next season.
You could go that route, but I also wonder this, and this is just my mind flowing a little bit. Like, is Seattle a destination for a veteran quarterback to go in there?
There's only one I can think of.
Okay, go with it.
Sorry, I cut you off. I apologize.
No, you're good.
There's one name that we all know is going to be talked about more than anybody right now, and that's Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
I truly think he's going to go to one of 2 teams. One is going to be either the Seattle Seahawks, the other one will be the Miami Dolphins, depending on what the decision on Tua is. Unfortunately, we'll mention Tua at the end quickly, just a brief update. But
We'll get into it when we talk Dolphins
Yeah.
paths.
yeah, that's who I think is going to be the big move. But when we get to the Raiders, we'll explain what's going on there as well.
The other part for me, like you brought up Rodgers. I'm not even thinking in that. Well, I'm thinking in that mold, but I'm also thinking in the mold of like Russell Wilson. We heard that the chatter. We had heard the chatter a bit on Russell Wilson. We just didn't know when he was going to get traded. That happened this past offseason. Like, who's going to be this offseason's Russell Wilson? That would be. And would Seattle be the team that says, you know what? We played pretty well. If we think we're a quarterback away, now I don't think Seattle's a quarterback away from contention. I think they need to work on a couple of things. I think they need a pass rusher, which I would target in the draft. But, if you can land the quarterback you really like, whether it's trade, free agency, however, or the draft, however it's going to be, this team's good. Pete Carroll always has this team prepared.
They've always been a solid team. I would say over the last 8 to 10 years, you always can have Seattle on a pedestal.
Yeah. And look, next year the NFC West is going to get better because we presume the Rams are not what they are this year. They're going to be better. They'll hopefully be healthy.
We know that Stafford is most likely retiring now.
Well, he's mulling it. Well, Baker's played well for him.
Exactly.
So
they don't have to worry if he doesn't. They just give Baker the contract he deserves.
Kyler's probably going to miss, I would assume, the beginning of next year.
I would think so.
So who the Cardinals get to be their quarterback while he's gone, that'll watch. And the Niners are just really good.
Well, hats off to the Purdy. I mean,
dude's pretty good.
He has definitely shown why he belongs in the NFL. Mind you, he was a no-name. None of us mentioned his name at all this year until he was starting.
Yeah.
I had to scramble to look this guy up. I had no idea.
To be perfectly honest, I had no recollection of the Niners drafting him, which is why he was considered Mr. Irrelevant, but he's become pretty relevant.
He has turned that into a Purdy team.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's been pretty good enough for them to maybe consider trading Trey Lance.
It's a possibility. I mean, Stephen
There's
A.
a
Smith
team out there who would take a
train.
chance on Trey Lance.
Yep. Stephen A. Smith is on the Purdy train. So.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The only problem I have with San Francisco having Purdy in the lineup is you're going to come into the playoffs, and he's been exposed now probably going to be 4 to 6 games, and teams are going to have time to study him. I would have, once the division was locked up, make sure their quarterbacks were healthy, let them sit, let them make sure do what they're going to do. And then you release the secretness of Purdy. That's the only thing. And I also think the playoff experience is going to be tough. So,
but I think that team is so good that he's not going to have to win them games in the playoffs. He just can't lose them games.
That's going to be the issue because you have Ayuk who's having a great year. You have Deebo Samuel with that double threat, can be in the backfield, can be lined up outside. And you have, what do you call it? You have a running game that's still finding itself, but is producing. So, and then the defense on San Francisco. Yeah. And then the defense on San Francisco has just been just that good.
Nick Bosa's got a great argument for Defensive Player of the Year. Fred Warner, for my money, has become this, I don't want to say this generation because it's kind of a similar generation. He's kind of become the new Ray Lewis. Emotional leader, tackling machine, really good player. But the part you didn't mention on the offense, you mentioned Ayuk, you mentioned Debo, you mentioned McCaffrey. George Kittle's kind of picked it up,
I
and
forget. I left the kettle on the stove.
I mean, he's been really good the last number of weeks. So that's just
Well,
another dimension they have. So now, albeit they're going to play the 6 seed because they're probably not going to move up to 2, and I don't think they could get to 1. So they'll probably stay where they are, which is the 3 seed in the NFC, which means they would most likely play the New York Giants, who get
in
in with
San
a win.
Francisco. Yeah, in
Yeah,
San
so
Francisco.
I think the Niners are really dangerous, but wait and see on that.
And,
But
yeah,
but
I
as you
agree.
mentioned, we go from Denver where Nathaniel he got fired. That's how this conversation started. But I'm curious to see who Denver brings in.
Well, you have to think it's got to be an offensive minded coach. And in this case, even I hate to say it, but it's a possibility Jason Garrett could go to Denver as the offensive coordinator. And that would make very good sense as he's used to running the offense that they run. And I would think if they have a better coach in the offensive position, maybe they'll attract another big name because, yeah, you have Jerry Jeudy, you have Cortland Sutton, you need a tight end, and you need a better. I mean, Javonte Williams is only as good as he can be, but you need another running back.
Yeah, and you're going to get Tim Patrick back next year. He's missed all this year with a torn ACL,
Right.
which I think has been a big loss for them. But the offensive line hasn't been good. But there's just something not there with this team. But speaking of bad teams, the Las Vegas Raiders of Oakland of Los Angeles have announced they are benching Derek Carr, quarterback Derek Carr, in favor of playing Jarrett Stidham,
Who has not played that much.
who has not played that much, knows McDaniels because he was originally drafted by New England, and there's that. I'm going to go off on a little soapbox here. So, Mark, if you just give me a little bit of leeway.
You can have a lot of leeway.
The Raiders are wrong for parking the car here. Because does Derek Carr lead the NFL in interceptions? 100%. Did the Raiders help him by going out and getting Devontae Adams? Yes. The reason the Raiders are a failure this year is not because of Derek Carr's inabilities. The weight of the Raiders' problems falls squarely on 3 people who are not Derek Carr. Culprit number 1, Mark Davis. Because you've run a clown shoe of an organization the last number of years. Let these guys do what they want when they want. The amount of first-round picks they've had to cut over the years due to certain aspects of their play or legal issues. Henry Ruggs comes to mind. So Mark Davis is a culprit. Mike Mayock is a culprit, the former general manager. Remember, I just said they've cut a bunch of first-round picks. Most of them were drafted by Mike Mayock. And this team has issues, a ton of issues. Look at their secondary. Their best corner is Rock Ya-Sin. It's more like Rock You Suck. They go out, they spent money on Chandler Jones. His biggest impact was the game against New England where he shoved his long-lost cousin Mac Jones into the ground while he's scoring the game-winning touchdown after Jacoby Myers, who still needs an attorney from Jacoby, and Jacoby creates that stupidity of a play So Mike Mack, you are culprit 2. And culprit number 3 is Josh McDaniels. Because everyone knows Josh McDaniels can't coach. He couldn't cut it in Denver. Then he slimeballed his way out of Indy before he took the job, and then he slimeballed his way out of Indy.
Right.
And then he went back to New England and thought, hey, I'll be the guy when Bill eventually retires. Guess what? Bill didn't retire. Josh McDaniels was like, man, I want to be a coach again. Raiders. And so we're going to go out. We're going to get Devontae Adams. We have Josh Jacobs. We have Darren Waller. We got Hunter Renfrow. We got guys. Renfro's missed a lot of the year with injury. Waller's missed a lot of the year with a hamstring issue. So Derek Carr, by trait, of course he's going to over-target Devontae Adams, who's going to be double-teamed. It's your job as the head coach to change it up. Josh Jacobs has had a monster year. Just pound Josh Jacobs. Let's go. Josh McDaniels is not a guy who brings this team together. This team has had a lot of moments this year where you just go, man, that just sucks, but it's a typical Raider thing. They need a guy. This is not a good example, but it's going to make sense when I bring it. The Raiders need a Mike Tomlin, a guy who is an encourager, a guy who brings his team together. No one thought the Pittsburgh Steelers would still be in the playoff race coming into this year and coming into this week. Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season. If Josh McDaniels didn't ride the coattails of Bill Belichick, he wouldn't have a job. Go ahead, Mark.
You know, you look at the Raiders' history, and there's a lot of history with this organization going way back. You know, I don't think there's been a better cluster problem, trying to keep this a clean show, ladies and gentlemen, cluster problem than the Las Vegas Raiders. This team has become the sucking black hole that their fans call themselves. They are just digging themselves. It's like this team is in quicksand. They're just trying to get out and fight to get the recognition they think, but they keep digging themselves into deeper problems, and they keep sinking farther and farther away. I mean, this isn't the Raiders team of when Bo Jackson and Marcus Allen were on the team. This isn't the team of when 5 years ago the Raiders thought they had the coach that Mike was trying to think in John Gruden. That was the focus. However, we know what happened when John Gruden. We're not going to repeat what happened. We've already reported on it. So they move on. Then,
sorry to cut you up, but for those who don't know, his name is in the Dan Snyder, Bruce Allen emails list. That is why he got fired.
Right. It wasn't, I mean, there are a lot of issues around it. We know about it. There's some of them I truly think happened because he wrote the emails, but a lot of the things on the field that were talked about, like Antonio Brown came out and said stuff about him. That's why he couldn't stay. I don't know how much of that was true or how much of that was Antonio Brown, not Brian. I said Brian. I apologize. I meant Antonio Brown.
Well, we know how trustworthy Antonio Brown is.
Right. So it's unfortunate John Gruden is out of football, but you want to know what? You do the crime, you pay the time. That's how it is.
Yeah.
But you can't get worse than what the Raiders are producing right now, and it's sad.
Well, and this goes to my point on McDaniels and Carr. Josh McDaniels would be the fall guy on any other team, not Derek Carr, because Derek Carr has embodied what a Raider is.
Right.
But because you gave an outlandish contract to John Gruden, 10 years, $100 million, you can't spend that kind of money on 3 coaches, 2 of which don't work for you anymore.
Right.
So Derek Carr now becomes a casualty because of this. And Derek Carr is going to become a former Raider because of this.
Okay, and the question then becomes, Devontae Adams, I'm looking through the deal. I'm trying to see if the whole thing is guaranteed. I don't believe it is. I don't believe it's guaranteed. And I do believe he has a no trade clause. But let's be honest. Who the heck is he going to refuse a trade to? If the Raiders ultimately decide that this was a mistake, it's not working. So we're losing Derek Carr. We lose Devontae Adams. We'll get draft capital and whatever back for him. I don't believe his contract is guaranteed. If I'm a Raider fan, I want to duck into the bushes like the meme of Homer Simpson going into the hedges, slowly disappear.
So Adams signed a 5-year deal with the Raiders worth $140 million. Their first potential out would be 2025. That is when they could first get. Now, they could trade him. His base salary for next year is just a little over $6 million, with $3.8 million being the signing bonus. Then it goes up in 2024 to $16.8 million. Then 25 and 2025, 2026, it goes up to $35 million. But that's according to Spotrac. So
okay, obviously that's how the deal was structured, and he probably got a lot of money up front. Whatever. You can't tell me there's not 5 teams in your mind you couldn't think of.
You're right.
Would not make a viable offer for Devontae Adams. And I'm talking, when I say viable, I'm talking along the lines of the coach's deal for what he did to get Ricky Williams. Is trade the
which
entire
was, I think, 5 firsts.
It was 4 firsts, and then whatever left of their draft capital was left.
I'll tell you this. I think there's a lot of teams that would make a deal for like that for Devontae Adams. This is a deal. If the Raiders decide to trade, now I believe he might have a no trade, so that might play into his hand where he can go.
Right.
I still want to make this point because I think it'd be hilarious. The Packers should make this trade. Devontae Adams comes back to Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers goes to Vegas.
That would be a joke.
That would be.
So then you're telling me your starting quarterback is Jordan Love.
Yeah, but I think the perfect spot for Devontae Adams, and I say this, one, because it would get Mark angry, but 2, it makes kind of sense. The Giants.
Yeah. I actually, believe it or not, I mean, Giants are on my list, but I would stake game the other team in East Rutherford. Could use him better.
See, but if I'm the Raiders, if I'm doing that deal, I not only want the picks, I would want Garrett Wilson in return too.
I think you have a better shot getting. No, I think you have a better shot of getting like Denzel Mims.
Yeah, that's not the guy I want.
No, you're not going to get Garrett Wilson.
Unless I get Elijah Moore, which we could have that conversation.
We'll bring that up. We'll put that on the back burner. I actually like that. Now thinking about it.
The one other team I kind of just thought of as we're talking, I know your guy Amari Cooper's in Cleveland, but Devontae Adams and Deshaun Watson could be
very scary or very cost worthy. And when I say cost worthy, I'm meaning more along the line of the fact that what happens if Deshaun gets suspended? Now you're going to have 2 guys who are $40 million not be able to do anything because your backup quarterback can't produce. That's a big risk.
I mean, I'd say Chicago. I'm tired of seeing Bears memes on Twitter.
If it's a coach type play, Belichick could make a hell of a play for Devontae Adams to bring him for Mac Jones.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think if they're bringing in Devontae Adams, it ain't for Mac Jones.
No, you're saying Mac Jones would be the return?
No, I'm saying if the Patriots bring in Devontae Adams, Mac Jones isn't the quarterback of the Patriots next year. It's someone bigger.
So, okay. Interesting. Mind you, we are pulling a Bill Murphy tangent here, so just stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay.
We're having a decent conversation. It's not
Yeah,
like we're having a good conversation. We don't have a bag over our head or anything.
right. Or
All
loud
right, so
clapping going on.
on to Sunday. Here's some of the clinching scenarios we've got. AFC, the Bills can clinch home field and the only first round bye with a win over the Bengals Monday night, which that's a great game. Bills.
It's gonna be a fun football game, yeah.
So Bills win plus the Chiefs have to lose, which I can't see happening. The Bengals win the AFC North with a win over the Bills and a Ravens loss to the Steelers,
Or
or a
Teddy.
Bengal tie and a Raven loss.
Right. Your
The
boys.
third one's not happening, but I'll say it anyway. The Dolphins clinch a playoff berth with a win and a Jets loss, or a tie and the Jets and Steelers lose. It's not happening, so I'm going to digress.
So who is officially starting for Miami on Sunday?
Everyone believes it's Teddy Bridgewater.
Okay.
And we'll get there in a second.
Okay.
NFC, the Eagles clinched the NFC East with a win. They also clinched the number 1 seed with a win or a Vikings loss. The Buccaneers win the NFC South with a win over Carolina. And the Giants clinch a playoff berth with a win or losses from 2 of these 3 teams: the Seahawks, the Commanders, the Lions. And the Commanders can get in with a win over the Browns, plus a Seattle loss, plus a Detroit loss, plus a Green Bay loss.
Wow, so, not asking for much there.
No. I mean, the Jets got all they wanted last week, but
yeah.
So as I mentioned, we'll start in New England, Dolphins, Patriots. It looks like it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. Tua suffered another concussion last week, but another quick tangent. If you spotted this on the field, and I'm talking not just to the Dolphins, I'm talking to the NFL, because we're supposed to have these concussion spotter people.
Right.
You saw a guy who's had prior concussions this year hit his head on the turf. He has to at some point get examined. Instead, nope, we're going to let him play because we didn't see anything. So the next day, Mike McDaniel, Monday, goes to his in concussion protocol. And everyone's bringing, what? When did he get hit in the head? And you see it, there's a play in the second quarter, third quarter, where he gets tackled, head kind of hits the ground, but nothing happened. And in the second half, he was terrible. But my beef is more with the league than it is the Dolphins on this one, just because you're supposed to have these guys spot it. They didn't.
Right.
Which makes us wonder what the future holds for Tua, but that's a whole nother conversation. Here's the thing. This is a must-win game for the Dolphins for 2 reasons. 1, win and it's kind of control your own destiny. 2, I'm going to say something that a lot of people may disagree with. The New England Patriots may have won 7 games this year. That does not mean the New England Patriots are a good football team. You have a better roster than the New England Patriots. In my mind, you have the better quarterback than the New England Patriots. I don't care if it's Tua or Teddy Bridgewater. So here's what I'm asking for. Mike McDaniel, you've got to adjust this offense. And can someone on this godforsaken, porous defense make plays. That's all I'm asking for. Win this game, it's control your own destiny. Lose this game. Listen, if Tua's not playing next week either, I'm in the mode of season's over anyway. But
it's not just the season that's really in jeopardy, though. It's his career right now. You know, if you look back at the quarterbacks and players who have suffered multiple, and I'm talking when I say multiple, I'm saying 7 or more. You look at the names of Aikman, Steve Young, Randall Cunningham, Donovan McNabb. I mean, concussions can cost you your career. Yeah, mind you, when it was back in, early part, CTE was not a talk about. And that is, for all you don't know, CTE is the disease you get in the brain from too many concussions that can cause variable motor skill, etc. problems. Moving on. There has to be a guideline here. I mean, 1 concussion, fine. It happens. Second, hey, a third, and this is in less than 6 weeks. Come on.
it's in a year.
And it's ridiculous.
And here's the thing. And he has to think about life after football. So I wouldn't be shocked if he announced after the season, I'm done.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
Luke Kuechly, who at the time of his retirement was the best middle linebacker in football. He retired at 28, 29 because of concussions. The dude from the 49ers, Chris Borland, he retired early because of a concussion. You guys, Tua has to think about life after football. This is putting a person hat on. This isn't about fandom or draft pick. I'm sure if he retired, the Dolphins would say, work for us in the organization.
Right.
Because we owe that to you. But right now, it's a sad moment, really. Not just for Tua, not just for the Dolphins, but for the NFL.
Right.
Because no one wants to see a 25-year-old retire.
And be in a wheelchair the rest of his life.
Right, exactly. You got a wife, you got a kid, you want to plan for your life after football. But that's a conversation for another day. So the Dolphins play the Patriots, who are still technically alive in the AFC wildcard race as well. Scrolling through, we got the battle in the NFC South. We got Tampa, we got Carolina. Tampa wins,
New Orleans.
They win the division. Carolina wins. Oh boy, Carolina's in the driver's seat.
And then don't forget about New Orleans. They're not out of it either. And
here's my
monstrous amount of help, though.
Here's my problem with New Orleans. Had they won that Monday night game in Tampa, I would have believed in them more. They lost that game when they were up 16-3. Nope. I can't believe in you.
Wow.
So, and by the way, Carolina has played better than Tampa most of the year. Tampa has showed me nothing all year other than Todd Bowles is the most boring head coach in the history of boring head coaches, and Bill Belichick exists.
Right. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's so many things that can change with one team losing and another team winning, especially in the NFC South.
Yeah, so all right. So we got that. Browns, Commanders, we kind of talked. The Commanders can get in. Giants can get in. As we get into the 4:00 games, Jets, Seahawks.
Seahawks are still in the hunt at 7-8.
So, yeah, as are the Jets,
as are the Jets.
Got a ton of help last week. And it's a Geno Smith revenge game. Everyone's forgetting that part.
Right. And I believe they're home. I believe Seattle's at home, right?
Seattle is at home.
Oh, so that is going to be a big factor. That noise, that crowd noise is going to be a big factor.
I'm intrigued by the matchup of Sauce Gardner, DK Metcalf.
Halpern got the sauce.
Oh, man.
That is just a pitiful play on the 101. Thank you, Anthony Laparo and Top Notch Sport Break.
So I wonder this though. I wonder if DJ Reed's experience in San Francisco helps them. Maybe they put him on DK. I don't know what Robert Saleh is going to do, but I'm intrigued by that matchup for sure. And look, it's not Mike White's back for the Jets, so that's going to be a huge get back. Zach Wilson won't even be the backup. It's going to be Joe Flacco. Zach Wilson's career in New York is over. Sorry, dude. Go hunt MILFs elsewhere.
He's going to be the next
Actually,
Geno
let me
Smith.
rephrase that. Go hunt Cougars elsewhere.
That was his downfall.
Cougar hunting?
Yes.
I mean, the irony is he was a BYU Cougar.
That's beyond irony. You want to know what the funny thing is? He was able to throw something at it and hit it. You know, don't worry, Zach. We still love you.
You'll have fun next year in Indy.
That's a possibility.
So, all right, we got the Jets and the Seahawks. We also have the Vikings and the Packers rematch from the Week 1 beatdown that the Vikings laid on the Packers. By the way, that's a whole different game if Christian Watson catches that first pass for a touchdown.
Right.
Now look what Christian Watson is.
The new favorite target of Aaron Rodgers.
And I'll say this because I know Jair Alexander said some stuff on Justin Jefferson, who, by the way, should be in the MVP conversation. As should Travis Kelce, but
I know they only give it to quarterbacks, but come on.
Listen, there is a blog on the website about Travis Kelce and Justin Jefferson MVP cases. Read it, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com. Some idiot I know wrote it.
He's the main writer for the site too.
Yeah.
And he's a Dolphin fan, I hear.
Yeah, what a loser. Hate that guy. So
exactly.
Anyway, if I'm the Packers, I wouldn't want to talk any smack about the Vikings after what they did to you Week 1.
Right, but the question becomes, does Minnesota have to play Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Kirk Cousins the whole game?
They don't, but I'll say this. What would make Viking fans happier than knock the Packers out of the playoffs?
Absolutely understandable. But what happens if Justin Jefferson breaks his ankle because he's played in the third quarter? I mean,
well, that's on Kevin O'Connell, who's going to have to manage their snaps.
Right.
Now, look, if Philly loses to New Orleans, they're still in line. They're still in play for the 1 seed, so they're going to have to manage that as well.
Right. With Dallas beating Tennessee last night, the pressure goes on to Philadelphia and such. They have to win. If Minnesota loses and Philly loses, Dallas, Minnesota, and Philly are all tied going into that last game, which makes it a very complicated decision on, do we want that week break or do we want to take out a weaker team and keep our momentum going instead of resting? Because we've seen what happens to teams when they go on boats and they smoke up before coming back to have to play the Green Bay Packers. So
yeah, so that'll be an interesting decision on Minnesota. We have Steelers-Ravens Sunday night. The Steelers are still technically alive. Baltimore's still playing for the division. Haven't heard anything on Lamar yet. We don't know if he's going to play.
I would say not. We know Baltimore's in the playoffs. So, I mean, yes.
Yeah, they could be as cautious as they want here.
Right. I mean, the division is at stake, but you want your star number one.
You want your quarterback there for the playoffs.
For the wild card. So I would say all points right now, no way Lamar Jackson plays in the final 2 weeks.
And Huntley beat the Steelers first time in Pittsburgh. So
right.
So that's a possibility. And then Monday night, we got the Bills and the Bengals, and I can't wait for this one.
What a showdown is this going to? This should be a preview of what the I'd say Kansas City will have something to say about it, but this should be a preview of the AFC Championship game right here.
Yeah, Kansas City's going to have something to say about that. I think the Ravens are going to have something to say about that too. I like the Ravens still also.
Depending on how healthy they are, yes.
On how healthy they are. I know I'm going to get crap from people in Buffalo. I love the way the Bengals are playing right now.
I think Buffalo's been kind of lax over the last few weeks. Yes, they've won,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't seem like they're putting 100% effort into it. So
Yeah. So
I like what I like Cincinnati in this game as well. I just think they have the better momentum coming into this game.
and if this game was in Buffalo, I might feel a little bit differently, but in Cincinnati, I'm not going to pick against the Bengals.
No, not with that home crowd and what's at stake right now.
And that three-headed monster of Chase, Higgins, Boyd,
It's
and
scary.
then add in Joe Mixon. Ooh,
Right.
actually, let me rephrase that. Mixing in Joe Mixon. I love Stephon Diggs and what the Bills have, but someone else is going to have to step up, whether it's Gabe Davis or Dawson Knox. Someone's going to have to step up on Buffalo's offense.
I'm sorry, everyone who saw me make the frowny face, but they just put a guy on TV eating Hellman's mayonnaise out of a jar on a spoon.
Is it the Mayo Bowl?
Maryland NC State.
Great segue for Bulls because we got the college football playoff tomorrow.
And what Mike, since you are our college football expert, what is the breakdown of the championship game here?
So for Michigan and TCU, I think my two things would be this. One, TCU can't turn the ball over because Michigan's going to capitalize on short fields. And the Michigan defense is such a good group. I think the other key for Michigan, and I've said it really the last two games when they had to go into Columbus and play Ohio State, when they had to go play in the Big Ten title game, was J.J. McCarthy can't lose them the game. And he's won them the game. So if he plays the lights out football he's played, Michigan's going to win. If Max Duggan plays the lights out football he's played, TCU's going to be alive. So I expect it's going to be a battle of wills. If TCU's defense plays well as also, that may shake things up because we talk a lot about the Michigan defense, but the TCU defense, pretty solid most of the year. Max Duggan has had such a good year. So I like Michigan. I can't go against khakis and Jim Harbaugh. So I'll go Michigan. The second game's a little bit different. Georgia and Ohio State is, I think, going to be an epic showdown.
It's two very well-coached teams.
Two really well-coached teams. I think Stetson Bennett isn't the sexiest quarterback in the draft next year, behind guys like CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis. But Stetson Bennett gets the job done. And he has guys like Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers who, listen, if there's a better, there aren't many players in college football better than Brock Bowers, not eligible for this year's draft.
Right.
There aren't many, but that's Georgia. And then they have a three-headed monster at running back with Kenny McIntosh and company. Flip side, Ohio State, it's all about CJ Stroud, and it's all about Marvin Harrison Jr.
Who will be your number one pick? I am calling it now, December 30th, 2022 at 12:57 p.m. CJ Stroud is your number one draft pick.
It'll be him or Bryce Young. But Marvin Harrison Jr., who's been sensational his freshman year.
Just wait till he gets to the NFL.
There has to be a way that the Colts get in the top 3 or 4 just to draft him.
I would think they would tank the year just for that.
Yeah, so I only say that because Marvin Harrison played for the Colts, everyone. Yes.
And one of the best receivers to ever play the game.
Yeah, he was Syracuse legend.
Yes, he was. Sad to Syracuse losing yesterday, but that's okay.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is another receiver for Ohio State. He won't play. He's already declared for the draft, so he's not going to play. The question is going to be which defense makes more plays.
And both
Georgia's
defenses are
defense,
very
which
strong.
Georgia's defense, which has been really good this year. They haven't had the turnovers like they had last year. Ohio State's had very opportunistic games on defense, but their last game against Michigan, they were not good. Whoever wins the battle of wills on defense, that's who's going to win this game. That being said, I like Georgia.
I
I think
you
it's
can't,
tight, but I'm going to go Georgia.
mind you all, I am not the college football expert. I mean, I watch mostly when it's New Year's Eve and New Year's Day is when you'll get me watching college football. As I said, Syracuse went down yesterday. Sad to see that, but I like Ohio State in this game. I mean, not take nothing away of what Georgia has done. A great football team. Take nothing away, but I just like Ohio State here.
I'll say this. ESPN has the line at Georgia -6.5. I would take Ohio State with the points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be closer than that. I think this is going to come down to a field goal game.
Yeah, listen, if we get Michigan or Ohio State 2 as the national title game, I'm all in.
I couldn't agree more on that.
That's the best rivalry in college football. But wait to see how that plays out tomorrow. Wait to see how the NFL action plays out Sunday. We'll be back with you next week on Sunday for the Sunday Sideline Report. Check out all podcasts, Anchor, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. And for Mark Goldhop, Sky Halpern, I'm Mike Rifkin. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Sunday Sideline Report. You can also check out this video, other videos we post, youtube.com/the Sports Insanity Network. Have a happy and healthy new year, everyone. Stay safe and namaste.
Catch you on the flip side, all.
And when you catch him on the flip side, it'll be a new year. Dun-dun-dun. Shh.